They say monsters are born cruel, but that's a lie people tell themselves because it's easier to fear a beast than to understand the boy who became one. And if anyone in our village proved that truth, it was Darrow. The man everyone whispered about behind closed doors. The man whose footsteps made children scatter and adults pretend they weren't afraid. But long before he became the woman beater, he was just a little boy with dark hair, big eyes, and a heart that only knew how to love one person: his mother. He remembered her warmth, her soft voice humming while she worked, the way she held his face gently when he had nightmares. And then, one night, everything cracked open. He heard shouting, a crash like a pot shattering, his mother's screams ripping through the walls, and then silence so heavy it felt like the world had stopped breathing. The next morning, his father stood in the doorway with eyes cold as broken stone and told him, "She ran away." Darrow believed him because children believe the parent they fear the most. He didn't know his father wasn't just cruel, he was a murderer, and that lie would shape everything Darrow became. From that moment, the boy who needed comfort was taught something else entirely. Women leave, women disobey, women betray, and a man must control what he fears losing. His father didn't raise him. He carved him into something hard, teaching him with fists and silence that love meant dominance and obedience meant peace. And Darrow, terrified of being abandoned like his mother abandoned him, swallowed every poisoned lesson until it became the only language he spoke. Years later, when he reached marrying age, the elders arranged a wife for him, the quiet blonde girl named Lyra, whose softness made people think she'd never challenge him. She was beautiful in a gentle, unguarded way, her long hair tied back loosely, her movements careful and respectful, and everyone said, "She'll keep him calm," as if the right woman could fix a man built on broken foundations. But Lyra didn't fix him. She stepped unknowingly into the storm of his unhealed childhood. From the very first week, she learned fear in a way she never had before. If she dropped a bowl, he shouted so loudly it rattled the windows. If dinner wasn't warm enough, he slammed his fist against the table so hard she thought it might break. If she didn't answer fast enough, he accused her of ignoring him. If she answered too quickly, he accused her of disrespect. Lyra tried everything, lowering her voice, speaking more softly, walking more carefully, shrinking smaller and smaller until she barely existed in her own home. But fear has a scent, and Darrow had learned long ago that fear meant control. So the more afraid she became, the worse he got, recreating the same household he grew up in without understanding why it felt familiar. One night, Lyra spilled grain across the floor. The sound of it scattering echoed like thunder in her chest, and as she dropped to her knees, her hands trembling as she tried to gather each piece, Darrow rose slowly from his seat, his jaw tightening, eyes flashing with a fury that wasn't really about the grain at all. "What did you do?" he snarled, stepping closer as she whispered apologies that didn't matter. Because in that moment, Darrow wasn't seeing Lyra. He was seeing his mother the way he remembered her the night before she ran away, her body trembling, her voice breaking, her fear feeding the rage inside the man who raised him. Lyra braced herself, waiting for the explosion, but instead something unexpected happened. He paused, jaw clenched, fists trembling, but he didn't hit her. He simply glared with such resentment and confusion that it froze her blood. He didn't understand why he was angry, only that anger was the only emotion he knew how to feel. The next morning, numb and exhausted, Lyra left the house to wash dishes by the river. There she met Mara, a sharp-eyed widow known for her wisdom and quiet strength. Mara didn't need explanations. The bruises on Lyra's arms, the redness around her eyes, the way she flinched when a bird flew too close, those were answers enough. Mara sat beside her and said softly, "You married Darrow." Lyra nodded. Mara's sigh was heavy with memories darker than the riverbed. "I knew his mother," she said, stirring the water with her hand, "before she disappeared." Lyra blinked in confusion. "Disappeared?" "Darrow said she ran away." Mara's eyes hardened. "Child, She didn't run. She died, and we all knew who did it. Lyra's breath stopped. Mara continued, her voice trembling with anger and regret. His father beat her for years. One night she screamed so loudly the entire village woke. By morning she was gone. The man claimed she left him. Strong men weren't questioned back then. Lyra felt sick. Her husband's rage, his emotional instability, his cruelty, it wasn't random. It was inherited, learned, embedded in his bones. But Mara wasn't done. She leaned in, eyes sharp with truth. Men like Darrow aren't born, they're made. But curses can be broken. Lyra whispered. How? I'm not strong. Mara shook her head. Strength isn't loud. Strength is refusing to break. Over the next weeks, Lyra returned to Mara again and again. Not to learn how to fight Darrow, but to learn how to stop being afraid of him. Mara taught her how to breathe deeply when fear rose, how to speak with steady clarity, how to stand tall even when her knees trembled, how to maintain eye contact instead of folding in shame. She taught her that submission was not safety, it was surrender. Slowly, Lyra changed. She walked differently. She spoke differently. Her eyes no longer darted to the floor, and Darrow noticed immediately. One evening, he came home furious after a long day. He slammed the door open, ready to unleash the storm inside him, but instead of finding Lyra trembling in the kitchen, he found her sitting calmly, sewing near the window. Her body relaxed, her expression soft but unafraid. Something primal inside him reacted, fear disguised as rage. "Do the chores," he barked. Lyra lifted her eyes slowly and said with a quiet, steady voice, "I will finish this first." His stomach twisted. His father's voice echoed in his mind. If a woman speaks back once, she'll do it forever. Darrow stepped forward, heat flooding his temples. "Lyra," he growled. "Do it. Now." But she didn't move. She stood, her spine straight, her eyes locked with his. "I am not your mother," she said, "and you are not your father, unless you choose to be." Those words shattered him. Not because she accused him, but because for the first time in his life, he realized she was telling the truth. His knees buckled. His breath hitched. The memories he had buried, his mother's final scream, his father's cold lie, the silence afterward, hit him all at once. His fists unclenched, his face crumpled, and then something happened. No one in the village would have believed unless they saw it with their own eyes. Darrow fell to his knees and cried. Not silent tears, but deep, raw, broken sobs ripped from the part of him he had spent his whole life trying to kill. "I'm not him," he choked. "I'm not like him." Lyra stepped back, not in fear, but in understanding. "You are exactly like him," she said gently. "But you don't have to remain that way." Darrow covered his face, shaking. "I don't want to be a monster." Lyra nodded, then stopped behaving like one. For days afterward, Darrow was quiet. He didn't yell, he didn't slam doors, he didn't bark orders. Instead, he moved like a man carrying the weight of his own reflection. He began helping with chores. He listened instead of shouting. He apologized, to Lyra, to the elders, even to Mara. It took months, but slowly, the man the village once feared became someone they respected, someone who confronted the darkness in himself instead of inflicting it on others. And Lyra didn't stay because she was weak. She stayed because she finally understood the truth. He was never a monster, just a terrified boy who never learned any other way to survive. She didn't heal him. She held up the mirror, and he healed himself. And as for Darrow, the man who once believed control made him powerful learned the most shocking lesson of all. Real strength wasn't in his fists, but in the moment he finally let go of the fear that ruled him since childhood. That was the day the curse ended. That was the day a monster became a man.